Hey everyone, I'm Joe and today I'm going to be talking about my top 15 books of 2015. This was a really difficult list to make, as you can imagine, due to the fact that, at least in my opinion, I think I read an awfully large amount of really good books. So minimising it down to a fairly short list, I wasn't going to take a very long video to talk about, was actually really hard work, but I've eventually managed it. And without further delay, I'll start talking about the books. Oh, and before I start, I couldn't decide on an order for these particular 15 books, so to keep it simple, I've put them in alphabetical order. The first book is A Scanner Darkly by Philip K. Dick. This is a science fiction novel about an undercover detective who gets in with a group of drug dealers and druggies basically, and tries to discover the source and cause of a new drug called Substance D. The book is, unsurprisingly for Philip K. Dick, really weird, and parts of it feel extremely surreal and has a really sort of trippy feel to it, which for Philip K. Dick is indeed perfectly normal. The ideas in it and just this weird feel throughout the book I thought was really interesting, and yet again Philip K. Dick has done extremely well by me. The second novel is a library book, so I don't have a physical book anymore to show you, but it would be Bird Box by Josh Malerman. This is a horror novel with very strong psychological elements. The idea of it is that there is some sort of event has happened and basically nobody can look outside because there is something outside in the world that will make you, if you see and nobody knows what it is, violently suicidal and you will die without fail. And it's about a small group of people stuck in this house, and one of them in particular, Mallory, she wants to escape with her two children, but how do you escape when you can't see where you're going, and especially when you don't know the area? So it's a really interesting idea, and the main thing about this book that I really found impressive was the sheer level of tension that is created from the very first page to the very last. It's uneasy and sort of slightly creepy, and it really holds up really well. Every single page is just tension filled and it just really does not let up at all, and I was really impressed by it, and Josh Malerman has done really well I think with this. The third book is Flowers for Algernon by Daniel Keyes. This is a well-known science fiction novel which is about a guy who is classified as retarded. I do not like using the word, but that is the case in this book. He undergoes a experimental procedure to essentially unlock the potential of his mind, and he starts to become much smarter, and the book is about the journey from what he was to what he is, and then to what could theoretically happen, because he realises due to the mouse, which is called Algernon, that this procedure, it does work, but then the mouse seems to deteriorate. So his theory is, well, will he deteriorate and will he become, well, stupid again? I don't like using that word again, but there you go. And this journey that he goes on is quite frankly astonishing. I love this book, and it's one of the few books that can get me really quite emotional and really wanting to, basically I want to punch several of the characters in this book who are not that nice to him. And the emotional impact of this book basically is phenomenal, and I recommend this to anybody. I really would. The fourth book is Leviathan Awakes by James S.A. Corey. This is the first book in the Expanse series, which I have also read and have the other two books just behind me here. This has been made into a television series as well, which has just started in America, called The Expanse. And frankly I love this book. It is a grand space opera science fiction novel. You have a crew of a spaceship, they get into trouble, let's say, and basically their adventures, which obviously go into the further books, are quite simply relentless and just really fun, because there is a wider range of characters, as you would expect from a space opera. There is a wide range of locations, and each book adds something new to it, and this particular one I think works really well, and it was just fun and relentless from start to finish, and it never lets up, and the pace is absolutely perfect in my mind. I mean, he really did, well, it's 2 authors actually under a pseudonym, and the pace is just really well thought out and really well done, and it's just a brilliant book. The 5th book is a Kindle book, and that is The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. Everybody has started to read this in the last 6 months or so, and indeed I am one of them, and unsurprisingly, same as everybody else as well, I happen to love this book. It is a science fiction novel where the motivation for the characters is not a war or some sort of power struggle or anything like that. It is purely that it is a crew on a spaceship, and they have a job to travel to a distant part of space in their ship, and then they basically sort of dig a wormhole back to where they started from for very fast travel for future people. And it's all about the journey and the characters and the way they interact on this journey. One thing I thought of is this is quite family friendly science fiction in a very literal sense, because nobody could be offended by anything that's in this book, and indeed there's no sort of real violence. I mean, there's mentions of violence here and there, but it's really not significant, and it's just a really nice book, and I just can't explain why this book is just so good and just so sort of easy to read and easy to understand. It just works on every single level, and it's just different as well, and frankly I love it, same as many other people on BookTube actually. The next book is also on Kindle, and that is Lunar New Moon by Ian MacDonald. This is a science fiction novel where it focuses around a colony on Luna, or the moon, and there are 5 families which are essentially how I think of them as sort of mafia families, and they control every single resource on the moon: air, water, power, recycling, food, everything these families control between them. And basically it is one family in particular that the book focuses on, and the matriarch of that family in fact, and their sort of struggles to survive in this extremely horrible, in a way, environment, because it is all about what you have. You can't be sort of lazy in this environment. You have to work for everything you get, and indeed you get manipulated and abused in some cases. And it's a harsh world, but a brilliant one. It's really well described. The characters work well, and just this sort of social and political interaction between the families, and indeed the members of the families, are brilliant, and I really enjoyed this part. It is actually the first of 2 books, which I didn't realise when I first read it, so there is another one to look forward to. The next book is also a Kindle book, and that is Rough Magic by Kenny Soward. This is a steampunk novel set on a world inhabited by gnomes, which is, I thought, really unusual. Often in books, gnomes are a very minor sort of subspecies and a very minor sort of set of characters in the background doing relatively sort of minor support roles. In this, they are everything, and they are indeed the purpose for the entire book, and there are 2 more in the trilogy which I've also read and loved. The characters are really well done. It's about a brother and sister gnome, and I'm not going to talk about the plot because it's quite complicated over the trilogy, but suffice to say it is a very interesting plot with lots of little nuances to it, and it's just fun and action packed with lots of really interesting ideas that you don't see that often, and frankly I loved it because of how original it was. I really can't get over that fact. This was just a brilliant book, and indeed a brilliant trilogy, and I'd highly recommend it to anybody wanting something a little bit different. The next book is The Cypress House by Michael Coita. I think that's how you pronounce it. This is a psychological horror novel where 2 characters end up going off a train because the older character has a weird sense of when people may die. He feels that the people on the train may or may not die. They get off, they come across an house, and there are a series of weird events happen at this house, which is obviously indeed the Cypress House. And the ideas and the just sheer feel and atmosphere of the book I thought was really impressive. I didn't think much of it even as I was reading it, I have to admit. But when I finished it and I was thinking back of it, then I realised just how good and how interesting the ideas actually were. And frankly, it's a really good book with some interesting characters as well. And one of the main ideas in it is interesting. I'm not going to give away spoilers, so I can't say any more than that. But yeah, a brilliant book. The next book is The Dispossessed by Ursula Le Guin. This is only my second ever Le Guin book, and indeed the first one was only the month before this. This is one of the Hainish novels, which there are 8 of in total, I think. And it is about a scientist who's trying to invent what basically becomes the Ansible within the series, and the political and social commentary that Le Guin is writing about in this novel is remarkable. She writes about a remarkable amount of different political and social aspects of society and how society can change depending on the actions of one man or on the inaction of a group of people. It's quite complicated in places, and it's a really thoughtful and thought-provoking book which I thought was absolutely brilliant. It's one of the best books I read that month, and well, indeed obviously one of the best books of the year. The next book is Red Mars by Kim Stanley Robinson. This is the first book in the Mars trilogy, second to being Green Mars and Red Mars, which are just over my shoulder here. This is brilliant. I cannot get over how epic in scope the book is. The ideas, the scale is just frankly breathtaking and enormous. This is about a group of 100 astronauts / colonists who go to, unsurprisingly, Mars initially in 2020, and they start building the basic infrastructure on Mars. The colonisation and settlement of Mars becomes much greater as people from Earth want to drain the resources from Mars. Some people want Mars to be as it was. Some people want it to be even more Earth-like and more sort of as a perfect Eden as you can possibly imagine. And it's all the sort of intrigue and the political wrangling. One thing I didn't expect about this book was the fact that I thought this was going to be more about the terraforming of Mars and the making of it into a Earth-like environment. And I thought the character development, from what I'd heard, was meant to be minimal. Yeah, I was completely wrong. The character development is everything in both this and the following 2 books. And indeed, because there is a lot to the books, I mean, in terms of sheer pages, it's 2,500 page combined trilogy. Yeah, you get a lot of development of everything about this book. It's just epic in every sense and a brilliant book. The next book is The Moon is a Harsh Mistress by Robert A. Heinlein. This is a classic science fiction novel which is well known within the science fiction genre for being very influential. And indeed, Lunar New Moon, I'm almost certain, must take several influences from it. This is about a colony on the moon, unsurprisingly, and it is about planning, execution and aftermath stages of a revolution of the lunar society. The characters in it are quite interesting, and one in particular, which is actually a computer with a highly advanced AI, which is essentially fully sentient, is really nice and really interesting because you really get to like this computer and you want this computer to do well, which is odd because it's a PC basically, just an advanced one. And the ideas basically were good, and I'm very glad I read it because this is very influential, as I've said, within the science fiction genre. The next book is a library book, so I don't have a physical copy, and that is The Turing Test by Chris Beckett. This is a science fiction short story collection. They are nearly all science fiction stories, although one of them is kind of half science fiction, half fantasy. And every single story in this book I thought was really impressive. There are not tons of them, there's about 12 stories, but every one of them is extremely well written and extremely thoughtfully planned. And there are little links between one or two of them here and there that I thought was quite nice as well. I mean, just thought was a really nice little touches. And one of them in particular, the sort of half science fiction, half fantasy one, I thought was really interesting. I'm not going to talk about the individual stories because, well, there's too many of them, but basically every single story was just brilliant in every way, and it's actually a surprise book because obviously I hadn't heard about it until I went in the library and just decided to pick it up. The penultimate book is Vintage Stuff by Tom Sharp. This is the first Tom Sharp book I've ever read. I've actually read 2 since it, and this is a humorous book set in England in around about the mid 1980s, although to be honest it could well be set today. And basically I loved this book. I was sitting here, red in the face, with tears rolling down my face. That's how hard I was laughing. My ribs were absolutely killing me because I thought I was about to break multiple ribs, actually all of them. And I haven't laughed so hard at a book in years. Actually, the only author that's ever managed to make me laugh this heavily is Terry Pratchett, which, if you know me by now, that is a very big and very important milestone and significant factor, I think, because Terry Pratchett is like on a pedestal on his own right at the top, so being as funny as him is impressive. And finally, the last book is Warship Down by Richard Adams. This is a classic children's fantasy adventure about a group of rabbits who leave their warren because of their living conditions and basically go off to found a new warren. It's about their adventures. Frankly, I had a few misgivings about this book because I thought a story about a group of rabbits going on a series of little adventures would be nice, but really trivial and frankly a bit silly because it sounded quite childish, frankly, to me. Thankfully, I was very badly mistaken. This is a brilliant book. Now, considering it is about rabbits, the characters are indeed very well developed, and you actually get to like and really empathise with the characters, which I was really surprising due to obviously my preconceived notions. And I'm really glad I read this because this is indeed a very important and very well loved fantasy book, and one that I think practically everybody should read. And with that said, that's it for my top books of the year. If you've read any of these, then please let me know in the comments below and we can have a discussion about them. As always, all my social media links as well as my book depository affiliate link will be in the description box below. And with that said, that's it. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you another day. Bye for now. Oh, and hope you have a good 2016 as well.